comes to taking care of our fish tanks and our aquariums, sometimes we want to offer our fish a variety of foods. Now, I talked about some of my favorite foods recently, the extreme krill and spirulina flakes and some of the other extreme foods that I use. But I did mention that sometimes it is nice to use other foods besides the prepared foods, and that would be live foods. Now, when it comes to live foods, there's lots of different options out there. There's, insects that you can get or cultivate yourself, worms, feeder fish, all kinds of stuff that you can do, brine shrimp hatcheries. But one of the foods that I find to be the easiest to take care of is Daphnia. Hey fish friends, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Zenzo from Tazawa Tanks. Now, one of the things that I want to just give you a general overview is when it comes to live foods, they're not always easy to take care of. Now, if you are a very experienced fish keeper and you're watching this, you probably think it's no big deal. I have microworms, vinegar eels, earthworm culture, Daphnia, brine shrimp, whatever that you've got going on, and that for that fish keeper makes perfect sense. If you're experienced, if you have a fish room, that might be very easy for you to do. But for a lot of you watching this video, you may not have either the resources to keep all different kinds of containers at different temperatures, growing a blackworm culture or having vinegar eels. All those are pretty easy. But you just might want something that's super easy, that doesn't require a lot of thought, and something that is going to give you a very good yield, meaning that you're going to get a lot of food out of your culture, and is very, very hands-off, the easiest thing to take care of, in my opinion, and that is Daphnia. Now, for those of you that are not familiar with Daphnia, it's kind of like a miniature crustacean. Just to kind of give you a generic term, I'm not sure exactly what classification it falls under. They are used a lot in research because of their the way that they can kind of scientists and biologists can look at, and health professionals can look at the circulatory system, and they use them for different studies, giving them caffeine, nicotine, etc., watching their heart rate. But they're also used readily in the aquarium hobby for feeding fish. Obviously, it's a great food. It's water-based, and it's so easy to use. They're often called like a water flea. They look like a flea, kind of in shape, and they have these little I don't know, things that they look like little feathery appendages that stick out that they kind of use to kind of propel around the water. And I did use my macro lens here to give you guys some close-up shots and some different angles and some lighting so that you can see what they look like up close. But what I want to tell you is that they're super easy to take care of. So this is a culture that I got a year ago, July. So this is June right now. So I got these 11 months ago, basically. And I got basically a bag full from a friend of mine, Backyard Aquatics. And I brought them home and I put them in a 10-gallon tank on my porch where I have my pond. And I didn't do anything. The water was green because I knew I wanted to get a Daphnia culture. So I just kind of threw some old tank water in that 10-gallon tank, let it sit outside. The sun beat down on it, grew a bunch of algae. It looked gross, right? But it was just basically a tub with green water. And I put the Daphnia in there, and they started eating the green water, essentially. So they are a filter feeder, so they're going to take in nutrients from the water column. I'm doing this because that's kind of how they swim around. But they're going to take in nutrients from the water column. That might be microscopic pieces of algae or, parts of algae in the water, which makes the green water. It could be foods that you're feeding, so you could use a dry yeast, spirulina powder, things like that. That will also feed the Daphnia. So what I did is I just put them in a 10-gallon tank on my patio and didn't do anything. Every once in a while when the water started to go low, I would just dump some tank water in there from one of my other tanks, like my African cichlid tank or whatever. When I'm doing a water change, I would just pour in a couple gallons and let that water fill back up. Because the sun was hitting that area every day, the water was staying kind of green, pretty green. When I noticed that the water was kind of starting to get cleared up because the Daphnia were eating it up, I would just take some flake food, like this spirulina flake food, and crush it up into a really fine powder in my hand, as powdery as I could make it, and then just dust it off right in the tank. And that's all I do to feed my Daphnia, and I just do that a few times a week. And they eat up the green water, and that's all I have to do. I don't have to do any water changes. I don't have to do any maintenance. It's outside. I don't have to smell it. I don't even have to look at it if I don't want to. I could stick it anywhere. And Very, very easy to take care of. It's been in the same 10-gallon tank on my patio for 11 months and I haven't done anything. So it's gone through summer, it's gone through winter, and the culture never crashed. Now in the winter time, the culture did get down to not a lot, so I wasn't pulling Daphnia out of there very often because the numbers were very low, because the temperature was cold. It was down to, water temperature maybe got down to like 40 to 45 degrees in the wintertime for a couple of months, like December and January. I live in California, so the water didn't freeze, but it did get cold, so they weren't reproducing as much. They like it to be kind of in the high 60s to low 70s or above, where they'll do better. So now they're taking off and doing great, but they lasted all through the winter. If I did want to keep them alive and feed through the winter and keep, culturing, then I could have, put a tank in here in the fish room and put a light on it and just kept them going, year round. But I just figured leave them outside, let them kind of go through the winter, and they were fine, perfectly fine. And then as the weather got warmer and the sun came out more often, I just started feeding more often, and they just kind of took off. So as far as feeding, I don't know if they actually eat the ground up flake, or if it's just that the ground up flake is decomposing and then there's algae bloom in the tank and then they're eating the algae. So anyway, I thought what I would do is just share again some close-ups of this Daphnia in this little water glass here, and then do a little bit of a feeding. We'll feed some of the fish here. Now as far as feeding, you could feed this to pretty much anything that's small enough to eat the Daphnia. There are different types of Daphnia. This is the smaller variation of the two most common Daphnia. So anything from like a tetra to even like a discus will eat them. My discus were eating them earlier today. Rams, smaller African cichlids like your Tanganyikans. I even put these in my brackish tank, so my bumblebee gobies will eat them, my Indian mudskippers will eat them. They're going to be too small for larger fish, so larger cichlids are not, they're too small to really make a difference. They're not going to, well, for one, they're not going to get full from eating these little tiny Daphnia, and they're just a little bit too small for larger fish. But anything that's like the size of maybe a medium-sized, small to medium-sized discus or smaller, some of your Central and South American smaller fish, anything that's a smaller, tetra, etc., they'll gobble it up and eat it right up. So I have even found that they have survived in brackish water, mildly brackish, for a period of time while my brackish fish eat them. So I'm going to go ahead and take my little pipette and go around and feed some fish and take some footage for you. What I did do is I did cut the tip of the pipette just to make the hole a little bit bigger, a little bit larger, so that it easily is able to suck up the Daphnia through that hole there, and I can squirt them right in a tank. So anyway, a really good food that I would recommend and really easy to take care of. So there you go. Just I wanted to share some thoughts on what I feel to be one of the easiest foods to feed your fish when it comes to live foods. And I did mention many other options, but this is about as easy as it gets. Maybe snails would be something that's also very easy if you just have a tank with some old tank water and you've got some pond snails, the pest snails in there, and if you've got fish like puffers and stuff that like those, that's about as easy as it gets. So anyway, maybe you should give it a try. If you have a hard time finding Daphnia, you can probably find a culture online and buy it there. Check your local fish store. They might know where to get Daphnia if they don't have any. Local fish clubs would probably also have someone in the club that has Daphnia culture that they would be able to give you some or sell you some. And then even like going online, like even going online like Craigslist or something, you could probably find somebody in the hobby in the area that might have some Daphnia. So anyway, comment down below if you've kept Daphnia before, if you feed them to your fish, what do you like about it, what don't you like about it, and maybe even comment down below on other live foods that you think are as easy or easier than Daphnia, because in my opinion, it's about as easy as it gets. So anyway, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like this video. Catch you on the next one.